So, Manoj, thank you so much for agreeing to have a chat, if you could, with us today about people analytics. It's a fascinating topic and one that I've been chasing myself as an HR consultant and practitioner for quite some time. By way of background, I'm Jeff Wellstead. Excuse me. I'm the founder and lead consultant at Big Bear Partners here in the UK. I basically have been working with hypergrowth startups in the tech and biotech industries over here for the last 20 years, and really in the last 10 years have really been kind of laser focused on ramping up and skilling up the human resource function to become a much more kind of strategic level capability within the organization, and to start driving proactively the decisions that need to be made in order for organizations to be commercially successful. And I ran across my good friend Manoj many years ago. Pardon me, when I was getting into people analytics and really starting to understand the power of these things. I, like a few other folks in my circles, were early adopters and trying to kind of bring these notions to the awareness of the human resource teams in the UK, and frankly struggled to kind of get the sort of traction that we'd hope we would do, only because I think, and there's a couple of reasons we'll get into in a minute about this, but Manoj was always ever one of those inspiring individuals who is out there in the wilderness and actually making it happen. And so with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Manoj, and if you could kind of just give us some background as to who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Hey, Jeff, thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure to meet and connect with you and listen to your point of view when it comes to people analytics or Gen AI in HR. A brief about me, been in industry for almost 23 years, primarily worked in the data and analytics space with the large firms like Tata Group, GE, Fidelity Investments, HSBC, before I decided to leave corporate and start by my own. And last 6 years, I have really been working with different size, different industry companies to help them transform their people analytics capability within the organization. So, yep, it's been a long journey, but I find myself quite privileged working with senior leadership, be it CEOs, COOs, CHROs, to really look into their talent priorities, and especially making those strategy driven through the data rather than the opinion. So, yep, that's a brief background about me. Looking forward to this conversation today.
Wonderful. That's very cool. Thank you very much. Well, I tell you what, I mean, you have had some powerful experience, but if you wouldn't mind, I would just love to kind of just set some context for this conversation as we're about to get into it. And look, I've had a pretty diverse background in terms of kind of going into organizations where there was sort of a minimalistic HR function setup. And there was clearly an attitude that HR, in its kind of typical or traditional and legacy constructs, was very much around hiring and firing, and kind of chasing policy enforcement, answering questions almost on an administrative and bureaucratic level on a regular basis, building policies, and helping organizations at least get through the kind of management of people without getting into too much trouble with it. And that was, arguably, kind of what people's understanding of the human resource function was. And with the advent of an incredible plethora, I think there's something like 50,000 human resource applications on the market today, and huge improvements that have been made in primarily the sort of, I guess, both the larger enterprise, but also in the SME world as well, in terms of HCM capabilities and ATS solutions and performance and management development, goal setting, and all sorts of things. We now are in a different space, I think, where we can actually start to be generating powerful data sets and start to look at those, compare and contrast those with our understanding of the current realities, and really start to kind of form some powerful data-driven opinions about where the organization is going. The question is, are we keeping up with that? Are we basically taking advantage of this powerful opportunity to really kind of turn this incredible, kind of mountain of data that we're sitting on top of into something that is truly constructive, truly useful, and truly actionable, with the executive teams. So yeah, so I think that the frustration has been that, excuse me, that the HR teams for the most part have had a lack of knowledge around what people analytics is all about and what it potentially can do for us. I think there's been too much focus on sort of administrative process, compliance, and policy enforcement. And it's therefore kind of created a very, very kind of reactionary relationship with the executive team. And so I'd be really keen to kind of understand, Manoj, what your kind of experience with that has been in terms of your going into places like HSBC and GE, and the different organizations that you were working within, but also in your current experience now, bringing the state of mind AI capabilities to the fore. What kinds of conversations are you having with the HR teams? How are you kind of getting them to realize the power and the magic of people analytics as a critical tool?
So I'm going to step back to really talk a little more about that. What are the things I see as a barrier whenever I have been having conversation with our maybe prospective clients as well as existing customers too. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned about HRMS, right, and 50,000 other tools which is available in the market, certainly I call it more like a HR tech tsunami that has really come into existence. There is a lot of confusion and doubts which runs in people's mind while they decide any kind of a product. But if you really look into it, every product is really built with a core feature in consideration. Mm-hmm. And majority of the time, what I get to see or question that I get to hear from our customers is that I get analytics in our HRMS too. But there is a big difference between the analytics that really gets provided through the HRMS system versus the analytics that we really do in people analytics. Because majority of the HRMS systems are built keeping transactions in considerations, and also the analytics that really get put on to that one is more transactional in nature rather than really looking at the future forward. Another challenge which I get to see it is, diverse set of data sitting into multiple systems. Hardly I have come across any organization that enables all the module of HRMS, but they really go and look into multiple products, right? Talent acquisition system will have its own data. Then after HRMS will have employee data. Then on top of it, you have L&D data, comp benefit, and still there is a plethora of data sitting into Excel, right? So your HRMS analytics does not really enable you to get the single source of truth coming out of multiple systems, because all HRMS based analytics is going to give you the analytics using the data which sits into that system only. But more importantly, if I really keep the tech stack aside, one of the things which I also get to hear is the very common question, am I really a right size company to start on people analytics? And this particular question, gives me a thought that whether a CHRO or a CEO really believes or prioritizing people analytics into their strategy or not, right? Because size is not important here. What is important is that why are we really setting it up people analytics, right? What is the business question that I'm going to really answer to? And then after, we need to think about the size as well as the data volume which exists or maybe needs to be generated. So it needs to be started with the business problem rather than really starting with thinking about is, are we really the right size company? So that's the second problem which I get to hear a lot. The third thing is when we approach or when we have conversation, I see that still not lot many CHROs are carving out very dedicated budget for people analytics. I believe there is a myth that there is a huge investment really required to get started on people analytics journey. And I think, why they feel that way is because in many examples I have seen, organizations has invested at least on $1 million in setting up people analytics, spent over a year, and still they haven't gotten anything as a return. So people have burned their fingers, and that's why they're more cautious about it. But at the end of the day, if I really look at my own experiences and working with the multiple customers, we have been able to really get, them started with MVP, securing a sponsorship, and then after really moving forward on that. So budget is something, that needs to be really be looked upon. I think the important is that people analytics should really become part of their priority list so that they are able to really budget something for it and get started on this journey. So that is how I really look into, what are the kind of challenges or the question that we get it when we interact with the different, different companies in different industries and locations.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny because you brought up, excuse me, you brought up a couple of really powerful things there. One is which, and it's interesting because I work with a lot of small to medium sized enterprises, and you're absolutely right. Oftentimes the question comes up, are we even big enough to care about this stuff? Does that really matter? And to your point, there's still mountains of data, right, to be collected there. And especially, I think, for the small to medium sized, fast growth industries as well, who are kind of like suddenly kind of expanding at speed and finding along the way more and more complexity building on itself. And the fact is that the HR community typically, or the HR function, is often just laser focused at that stage on recruitment and also on kind of placement and onboarding activities and just getting people to get into the work and so forth. And there's not a lot of kind of like higher level thinking about how is it we start to kind of think about and monitor the relative health of this organization in terms of like, how people are actually coming in and integrating and plugging into and getting trained by, their new teams. And how is it they're able then to kind of track their progress moving forward. So that's an issue. And then the other issue is one of this data integration challenge, right? Because oftentimes, look, when you're a larger enterprise, you can afford huge systems, ERP systems like Oracle or SAP or Workday. And they're very expensive and they're very extensive systems that typically are sort of, or at least tout themselves as being sort of all in one. And so as being sort of a single source of data, they can actually then kind of build multiple, pull things from multiple modules and into, but, when you're an SME, you don't really have that luxury, right? You're typically kind of pulling in an HCM system, then you need an applicant tracking system on the front end, and you need, performance management and goal setting and perform, and kind of like tracking of people's progress towards things. And then, oh gosh, we need a learning and development system potentially. And each one of these things tends to be quite disparate and separate functions, separate tools altogether. And so the question then begs, how is it that you can knit together and extract information, data to create, I guess, what you would call a data lake, right? Sort of like unified place where all of these data components are kind of landing and existing, from which we can then start to extract information to make sense of it. How is it you approach that whole process? Because that to me is fascinating and arguably one of the huge obstacles, at least I see, in the human resource function.
Yep. So, Jeff, when we really look into setting up a people analytics capability as a managed services for any of our customers, we just do not jump into creating the solution which is being asked. We really take a very defined approach towards it. I really call it more like people, process, infrastructure, data, and culture. These are the 5 bet, and in a short form, I call it PPIDC, to really communicate it better to our customers. But what does it really mean? When we start onto this journey, it needs to start first with the roadmap. A roadmap which is like not just about tools or buying tools or building tools. A roadmap which would be really be enabling us to see what are we going to achieve in the next 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years timeline, because people analytics is not just you implement it once and you are done with it. It is a journey which needs to be really be traveled, because maturity curve needs to be really be lifted as you really make progress on this particular path. So it all starts with the roadmap. So we really work with the leadership team, not only within the HR community, but also the business leaders to understand what do they really expect HR to really deliver for them? What are the kind of questions they are asking HR to really understand that how this particular roadmap needs to be really be developed. Once you do have a roadmap, that really sets the tone for prioritization, that what sort of a data that needs to be acquired. And when data needs to be acquired, we really look into two kind of data. You can call it active versus passive data. When we say active data, meaning the data which sits into HR system, passive data, those data may not be collected for HR purpose, but could be used for really answering those business questions, right? ONA is a very classic example when it comes to, using, passive data like email data and so on. So then you start to really look into tracking that data back into defining where are the sources, and you will end up really finding, diverse sources, which really leads into building the data lake, right? So that's the second step into the whole thing. You really start to look into your data infrastructure, where exactly I'm going to house it, how exactly I'm going to build the whole data lake. And once you do have your data infrastructure really ready with it, you move into really start thinking from the user's point of view, giving them some sort of insights out of the data that you have acquired based on the prioritization that you did it in your roadmap. What it does is it will start really giving value to your end users as soon as possible. Not to boil the ocean, but you start to really give them, step by step, more like is running a sprint, giving them some sort of insights out of the platform. And that is where your whole visualization, what are the business questions that needs to be answered, really start to play a role. Once you do have that, people start consuming that particular insights. You start to ask more questions as a business leader. When you ask more questions, it means your analytics start to get further better. It means you start to demand for more data. And that really start to enhance the overall capability of the platform that you are building it over there. Also leading into really, getting into maybe to answer some question, you start to look into much more advanced analytics to really answer those questions. But one more thing that needs to be really be done in this whole journey, which we emphasize a lot, into the culture side of the organization. You build people analytics, you enable your users, but if you do not enable them with a training, how to really use it, you do not really, drive the change in the culture of being a data-driven organization, you are not really going to get the ROI out of this particular investment. So we really use this whole PPIDC framework to really, drive the ROI out of this investment. And to achieve that also, we take a very MVP route. I mean, we just pick it up, one significant problem, which, they want to address it first, create it, solve it, demonstrate the, the ROI out of it, which also help you secure a sponsorship for the whole roadmap that you have built it for 3 to 5 years and so on. So this is how we really go about expediting this journey for our customers, where we really run people analytics for them as a managed services, where they just need to focus onto the business side of it, and we focus on really delivering things for them.
Right, on the mechanical side. Yeah, then it makes perfect sense. And I love that notion of, let's focus on business problems.
Yep.
We're not here basically to start creating, ridiculous, superfluous information and to create more complexity than we need to for no good reason, because it sounds like the sexy and right thing to do. And instead focus on the things that are really on fire for the business. So as an example, say attrition, voluntary attrition, which is never something that you want at a very high level, high percentage level. It's extraordinarily expensive, right? When you basically take a look at it and look at all of the impacts across the business. I think the CIPD over here in the UK estimated that voluntary attrition costs the business something like 1.5 times the salary of the individual who has left, in terms of kind of re-recruiting for that position, the loss of morale and potential productivity on the desk, the fact that you've got to go and hire somebody, then train them up. It's a sunk cost that suddenly gets into the millions very quickly when you start to get into double-digit attrition figures. And so solving for something like that is super powerful, because not only does it kind of go to the bottom line, but also obviously helps, kind of top line improvement as well. So I see what you mean. That kind of builds traction right away with the business, and then starts to address immediately the return on investment, for that particular thing. The Just thinking through, your direct experience with CHROs or HR organizations. What has been sort of your experience in terms of the sort of top three kind of obstacles that hold them back from engaging with this whole process? And if you could, in the same breath, also kind of talk about how it is you kind of overcame those elements.
Sure. So top three, if I really, mention here, that would be one, a sponsorship budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number two is, really being clear about why do they want to start with people analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And the third part is capability part of it.
Right.
So if you really look into it, if I now, connect all these three dots, that is where, when we started to work with our customers, we said that you just need to have the vision that I want to build people analytics in my organization. And we will come in, we will bring this expertise to really help you get all three done. All three battles, we will win it for you, work with you, where we will work with you to really develop the roadmap, as I mentioned earlier, which could really be used in addition to the MVP to secure a sponsorship, to secure long-term budget. And more importantly, we will also really help you work with your leadership team, with you, asking right questions to figure it out. Okay, when we are building it, what needs to be really be built and prioritized? And capability is just, we bring everything end to end, people analytics capability over there. So what I really see is these are the three things majority of the customers are really the obstacles I really come across whenever we really talk about people analytics. One more thing I get to see that some of the organizations who are really, wants to get into people analytics, they come very clearly saying that I want to get started with people analytics, and tell me how to really, get started with it.
Mm.
Compared to some organizations where you go, you need to really, invest a lot into educating that what exactly people analytics is all about and how it could really deliver a value for you. So the first one is the lot where things are much more easier to work with because they have already thought about it. They know how exactly they can leverage the ROI out of it. And also the collaboration goes much more smoothly over there, working as a partner or an extended arm rather than the second one. Second one really requires a lot of investment in terms of education, in terms of really, sharing that what are the possibilities that could be really be achieved out of it. So that is what, I get to really see it. I'm being very candid based on my interactions and experiences with, a lot many CHROs in the last few years of my association with people analytics.
No, that's brilliant. That's a brilliant insight. And I love that notion of partnering because I think, frankly, and certainly in my experience, the heads of HR and so forth are they're inundated, bless them. And it's not for lack of desire. It's not based out of, some level of pure ignorance that they're not engaging with this stuff. They know full well that this is, kind of the path forward for them to kind of be seen as super critical and credible members of the executive team in terms of driving the business forward proactively, predictably, as opposed to reactively. And I love that notion that you basically get involved because you know their pain and you know probably where they're stuck. And that notion of saying, hey, let's go to your leadership team together. And let me help you, if you will, with the language around this and show them what the art of the possible is. And then suddenly, hopefully, light bulbs start going off over their heads and they're like, wow, cool. That makes perfect sense. Yes, I would love to stem the tide of attrition. I would love to be able to hire, quality individuals in a much faster and more kind of efficient manner. Yes, I would love to save money, but I would also like to grow the business. And I would love to know what kind of to be thinking about from a people perspective to ensure that we've got the right employee value proposition, right? That we're attracting the right people, that we're getting them, fully productive in a very short frame of time. And then importantly, we're keeping the best people, and really kind of making strides in our business overall. So that makes perfect sense, and I love that partnership notion. I also love the educational notion too, because I remember when you and I were talking about the solutions that you provide. At the very tail end of that relationship was sort of this continuous education of the team, so that they never felt as if it was just sort of a ship, a drop ship, kind of scenario where it's like, great, here's your package, we built it out for you, good luck, we'll see you later, kind of thing. It was sort of a continuous process of engagement.
Yep. And Jeff, you reminded me about one more thing that,
Yeah.
one other question which we keep getting is buy versus build. Yep.
Mm.
Whether we should really, build it internally, the whole people analytics capability, or should we really get someone to expedite onto this particular journey? And my response to this question is it depends. It depends on, do you have a dedicated people analytics leader in your organization who understands this space and have been given a single motto to build this capability within a very defined time and the resources which is provided, right? What I have really seen is majority of the time this role is led as a multi-hat role where the person is really, looking after multiple other things in HR function, and people analytics is just one bit of it. That is where I guess the focus starts to really, get diluted a lot. If you do not have a dedicated people analytics leader in your organization, I believe the buy is a very good option for you. And my recommendation would be that, either you can, there are two options available. One, either you can get into completely managed services where, it can be run as an extended team, or you get into BOT model, build, operate, transfer, meaning experts come, they build it, they operate it for some times, and meanwhile, you build your internal people analytics team, or with their help, you build it. And then after that, transfer the whole capabilities to you, and you run it from the long-term perspective. So the whole goal in this whole collaboration should be, how do I get started quickly? How do I get ROI as soon as possible from this particular investment, while keeping the long-term vision in consideration that it needs to be really be, let's say if you decide to build it internally, how do you really go about building it internally too? So that's another thing which I keep coming across, buy versus build. I thought I'll just quickly add it.
No, and it happens in every aspect of the business, right? There's always that question of, wouldn't it just be easier because we know ourselves so well, to go create our own thing here? But look, I mean, man, it's hard work, right? Especially when you're sort of an SME and you're fast growth, and there's a lot of other complexity and chaos associated with the expansion of the business. But certainly even in larger enterprises, it's that notion of, gosh, we don't even know who we are. We've become so disparate geographically, functionally, and we're still struggling day in and day out trying to figure out how we organize optimally, and figure out, what the best route to market is, and how is it we can increase profits over time, and all of those kind of powerful questions. It's hard, man. It's hard running a business, and then to be kind of in, as an HR team, be in situ and trying to make sense of all of this and trying to answer really difficult, heady questions, around what should we be doing next? What should we be planning for? What should we be preparing for? How do we actually go and remediate existing challenges and problems? Go fix all that stuff, HR, if you don't mind. Oh, by the way, and keep the tires on the road. We're still going 100 miles an hour. Whatever you do, don't take your eyes off of things and keep your hands on that steering wheel. And it's just really hard work. So how do we solve for that, right? Manoj, I mean, this notion of going out and hiring, a 75,000 pound a year, kind of data analyst, basically, to come into my organization and to magically somehow make sense of all the data across multiple disparate systems, to then also, by the way, be speaking and working with leadership to understand what their particular business challenges are so that we know what we're meant to be solving for. Then to go away somehow quietly and build an entire function around this with software, with capability, with dashboards, with meaningful data that is what I call actionable, stuff that tells us here are the particular areas that you need to be worried about. Here are the potential solutions for you to start to recommend. Here's how we go build programs and actually get these off the ground. I mean, I can already envision a small army of people required to kind of focus just on that information. So what kind of hope can we give to people that there is a better, smarter, faster way? And the reason I say this, Manoj, and I'm sure you probably agree, with the advent of generative AI and what I'm reading in my own research as I'm starting to retool my consultancy toward this space, there is now going to be, forget a mountain of data, there's going to be an entire planet of data suddenly available at our fingertips. We don't even know what to do with the data that we've got today, and yet we're desperate to make an impact. So where do we go from here? How does this work?
So while I would really talk about, you mentioned about how do we go faster, better, and maybe, with a lesser cost, I will answer that question in a while. Meanwhile, if you could really, enable my share screen option, I can show you something more from the value perspective. When we really solve this problem for our customers, how do we really look into, even though when it comes to giving a simple insight for them, right? So let's say, for example, I'm sure in your experience, you might have seen, multiple, measurements when it comes to really, looking into different aspect of HR function. When we really look into it, I'm going to really, share quickly, not in detail, but, just keeping the time in consideration. When we
Sure.
really build something like this, I call it, a perfect organization, right? What are the measurements I need to really build together to build a perfect organization? And to do that, you know, all the different dots within the HR function has to come together, meaning, all the different teams or the functions within HR that needs to have a measurement. So first thing first is, all the functions needs to be really be brought in together. And if I'm the part of leadership team, I'm the CHRO, I need to have a view to all of them together. That is point number one. Number two, when I'm really looking into it, I need to keep three things in consideration. One is efficiency. Second is effectiveness. And third is the impact story. So when we think about really, bringing value through the, let's say, people analytics for our customers, we need to really look into covering all three aspects of it. This is a very simple view which we created for one of our customers, where the idea was that we will help you not only connect your HR actions to the business outcome, but also within HR, I'll show you how exactly we can drive your efficiency, effectiveness, and impact stories. Very simple example could be, let's say this particular card, I call them as a theme, and there could be one theme attached to one of the HR functions, so that all the HR functions can really come in one pager for your CHRO to take it in a boardroom, or possibly to speak to the CEO and talk about what is the health of the organization really look like. Let's take a shot of talent acquisition as an example, right? In case of talent acquisition, majority of the time we talk about efficiency meaning how faster we are able to really get people onboarded. But at the same time, when we really get someone onboarded faster, are we able to really get the right talent, quality talent on board or not? It means you need to really start measuring quality of hire as well, because just really getting talent faster is not the answer to your business, but it needs to be faster and the quality outcome. Now, when you really go after quality outcome, the faster hiring, we need to also keep a tab on cost efficiency. It means you need to also really look into cost per hire. So if you see in simple visual like one where we have brought in, three metrics together, talking about efficiency, effectiveness, and impact, all three stories together. So what happens is it really gives me, more like you can say the KPI card, which is giving me an insights about where exactly the health of it. If I need to really go drill down further, I can click on it and I can go to the next level insights to really decode it further. But when I'm speaking to, let's say, a CFO or a CEO, this is what is really needed for me. Another example could be, let's say, as simple as, your attrition. You touched upon onto that aspect of it. Majority of the time, we leave the discussion only looking into what's my turnover rate really look like, right? We do not really get a lot into talking about the cost of churn, but that is what really should be driving the attention, right?
Right.
Especially in today's time when we have been trying to really set on or save cost for the organization to increase the profitability of the company, right? Either you increase revenue or you decrease cost. How do I go about really reducing my cost? One of the ways I really reduce the attrition rate so that I can really reduce the cost of churn. But until unless I do not really start measuring, I cannot really get into really, figuring it out whether it is really a big problem for me or not. And if I need to really go deeper into it, I can always get deeper into going further into the next level where possibly I can really look into, okay, what are the now different kind of attrition that really look like, where attrition at the senior management level versus new joiners, top performer. I mean, the usual metrics which majority of the places we really look into. But the more importantly, what I'm highlighting here is that not only the quantity of number of people leaving the organization from a grade, but we should also start to really look into it. What sort of a cost when someone leaves it from this grade to this segment of the user and so on. And at the same time, is there a way I can get some sort of a forecast as well that if I do not solve this problem, then, whether the problem is going to become more acute or possibly the problem is going to really decrease over a period of time. This is a sample data, sample, view over there, and you can really get into it. So if you see within 2 pages, you would be able to really answer this question so deeply to really figure it out where exactly my hot spots are. Now, let's say if I really decide on looking into cost of churn, that, hey, this is what exactly, place where I want to really get into it. Your predictive models could be really be brought in to bring the different drivers that what exactly needs to be really be looked upon. What are the things really making people really go out of your go out of your organization? What are the places we need to really, make interventions and really drive into it? When we built a state of mind AI using generative AI, that was the whole goal, that how exactly we make, retention as quickly as possible, not to wait till, annual engagement survey outcomes really comes over there. But I'm not getting into state of mind today. We will talk in maybe, some other day. But hopefully you got it, right? When we really think of giving value back to the organization, even though if one metric, which is attrition, that we want to really pick it up, we can really go end to end, really, communicating and building this whole narrative out of this one. So, when we get into it, as I said, when we engage with any of our clients, we really look into the whole philosophy of people analytics, which starts with, putting the roadmap, putting the data lake, putting the right metric for that particular industry, for that organization, bringing this whole, advanced analytics into the offering and taking it to the really, driving the whole data culture or change management as well. Certainly, the data control and governance really remains the foundation of the whole offering. And depending on what sort of a capability we want to build it into and the roadmap that we really decide, the cost, I'm just giving you a ballpark number, depending on the kind of expertise that we deploy. I think you spoke about something around 70 to 100K pound for one analyst. In this particular case, we ranged somewhere between $50,000 to maybe $80,000, depending on what level of expertise we are deploying. And we always been accountable to really deliver the impact. And you do not need to really wait for a year to really see the impact. We are able to deliver impact every quarter as soon as we really start and get hold on to the data. So that is how we really go about it. I covered the first piece first because I wanted to show you how exactly these narratives could really brought in a lot of value to the organization. I just touched upon onto one area of attrition, but imagine that if you are able to really drill down into each and every themes which I really spoke about, be it connectivity between your employee net promoter score to customer net promoter score, be it manager effectiveness or your engagement or experience insights to performance or maybe L&D space, and all is possible and all could be really be brought in with a click of a button onto your leadership team as well as for your HR business partners. One more thing I wanted to talk about is
Yeah.
when you build people analytics capability, we should not build only for HR. We should build this capability for the organization. It
Agreed.
means your non-HR folks should also get benefited out of it. Your operations team also should get benefited out of it.
Yeah.
Your leadership team should also get benefited out of it. So this capability is not only for HR, this capability is for the organization. And that is where the real value comes in.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Manoj. I mean, I totally agree. This notion of kind of what I guess they call democratizing and delegating, kind of information so that people can take action, wherever it is they sit from whatever perch that they're currently, kind of sat upon. Importantly, they can collaborate and share their various perspectives with each other to start to solve some of these things. That was unbelievable. I'd actually not seen one of those powerful dashboards, a live dashboard, before. And the ability to kind of like see the macro view across an entire dashboard, but then to kind of drill down into each one of those things, right to the point where you can start to pinpoint this is where it's going wrong, or this is where it's going beautifully right. And we want to kind of like, kind of keep that, maintaining and churning over. That is huge. And so you're saying, and I know I'm just kind of like hyper aware of time here, but you're saying basically that engaging with a managed outsourced capability like this, where you can kind of turn the dial up and down, and you can get as deep and wide as you'd like to, you can have that up and running like in a very short space of time. Like you're talking a matter of what, of weeks, or what kind of time frame?
Yep. As soon as we really sign up the contract, and then after get started on it, uh, you know the first thing first we do it is starting with the roadmap part of it.
Mm-hmm.
On the roadmap, depending on if our client are able to prioritize all our meetings with the leadership team and the different stakeholders that needs to be involved, we get that out within 3 weeks time, the roadmap, and in
Wow.
parallel we also starts to really walk towards some of the areas of interest that might be emerging from those discussions. So we run things in parallel, so that let's say by end of 1 month or so, you get to start to really see your first measurement coming out of this whole engagement itself. So I call this as an MVP approach, right? Very much like a way any product really gets built. And then in top of it, we can keep, evolving it from there onwards.
Amazing. God, could you imagine? I mean, literally going from I don't know where to start to I've just hired my first data scientist, and and now I've got to integrate all the technology, build the data lake, cleanse all the data, start to make sense of the data, build out dashboards, do this, do that. I'm going to probably have to hire a couple of more people to get that sorted out and coordinate with multiple different departments across my company. I'll see you all in a year. You know what I mean? And now what you're saying is I can have something similar to what you were just sharing in a much shorter space of time, literally for the relative cost of like a singular data analyst to go set that up. And you get it all in one. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Most of our
Wow.
clients, when we speak about that, what exactly they like about people analytics as a managed services, there are a
Yeah.
few things that really emerge. One is, since we have done this for so many customers, they can get us started on day one itself. So there is no learning curve that really comes into picture. So it's like you get us on board and you just start running from day one. There is no like you first crawl, then you stand, then walk, and then run.
Yeah,
You are
right.
running day one itself. So that is one. Second thing is there is no overhead cost. I mean, they don't need to really, get a manager, then manager, really, hires few analysts. They need to manage. Nothing like that. Here it is just we come in, we do the job, and we start to really, deliver the result. The third piece is what they also loved is a scale up and a scale down feature of our whole engagement. So at any point in time, you need, let's say more advanced capabilities. Any point in time, you can just, enable that. I'm talking from the, technical functional expertise point of view. In addition to that, you want to increase, let's say from 3 FTE engagement to you want to move to 5 FTE engagement, absolutely possible. Or you were at 5, you want to bring it down to 3, that is also possible. There is no need for you to get into the whole severance discussion or those kind of a thing. right? So it is the much more faster, better,
Amazing.
and less management overhead kind of engagement that we really provided to them. And certainly our expertise really comes very handy over there to help them really build this capability for them. Yeah.
That's amazing. God, that's like what a relief that would be, to kind of reach out to organizations. I can't wait to shout loudly about this capability. Wow, this is powerful. Thank you very much, Manoj. I appreciate your spending your precious time with us. Can you give us a sort of a parting word, sort of like your last kind of reflections on what you see, kind of taking place now at the very beginning of 2024 and beyond? Everybody's like into their predictions for HR in 2024. I've shared a bunch on LinkedIn from the likes of McKinsey and Gartner and
Yeah.
PwC and all sorts of things, and they always ever talk at an extraordinarily high level. But what do you kind of see as sort of like your top predictions for 2024?
So I see everybody today has been talking about generative AI,
Mm,
and none of the predictions are really getting completed without that. For me, what I believe is, be it generative AI, people analytics, or anything that may really come up in future, is enabler. What really needs to be really be done is we really become very business oriented function, really get driven by what really makes us exist into this world as a business, right? Why my customers really buy things from me, and start from there to really figure it out. What kind of enabling technology is really needed for us. Technology is an enabler, and that is how it is really going to be for us. So what I really, look into this, if I really, if from 2024 perspective, that a lot of efficiency gains are going to really happen because of the generative AI. Use cases increasing in enterprises. Yes, still there is a lot of hype around that. Not very solid generative AI use cases has really come up where enterprises have implemented. Yes, B2C side, there is a lot of use cases that has been really been emerging. But at the same time, what would happen is with this whole efficiency at hand within HR function, I believe that, HR would start to really uh, reshape them differently. They
okay.
had to really, start to think more from the business perspective. They have
Mm,
to start really think from why my company really exists, what I can do to really, deliver the agenda of my CEO and CFOs. I mean, I'm not saying that they have not been really been doing it, but so far we have been having the one of the thing that, hey, I do not have a time to really look into those strategic agenda, which
yeah.
I believe that generative AI is going to really, solve a lot and driving a lot of efficiency and effectiveness into the work which we do it. It means we are going to have a lot of time at hand. That means, a lot of, unlearning and learning that needs to be done within HR function and become more like a translator to really, blending between an HR function knowledge, technology, and the data, all three together to really, drive impact. That is what I really see as one of the things start to really emerge. If it doesn't really emerge, then possibly, things may not really go very straight until unless we start to really bring all three aspects together.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, right? Adoption has always ever been slow in kind of areas like this, only because of the fact that we don't know what we don't know. And so to dive in is a massive risk. And so it's important to have people like you on the planet to basically go remediate that risk. Importantly, kind of lift the veil, if you will, of mystery behind these types of things and say, look, there's an easier, faster, smarter, cheaper way of getting you to where you need to be to achieve all the wonderful visions and goals that you have for the HR function. So that's super helpful. And look, I very much look forward, Manoj, to our continued relationship. I think that what you're doing with State of Mind is arguably kind of existential, especially in the light of all this AI stuff coming online. To get to a point where we as HR practitioners are starting to feel eminently more comfortable with reams of data now making sense for us on dashboards and having the sort of structural and architectural capability to drill down into these things to pinpoint where things are not working or not optimized or not efficient enough, and then kind of then letting that become our it's our mandate, right? Over and over again. I mean, that basically lays out the entire focus of the HR organization going forward in terms of the various programs and interventions and proactive activities we can engage with to really start to kind of improve the business on a continuous basis, but also to help steer the business going forward based on all the wonderful learnings that we've got at our fingertips. So, look, mate, that has been amazing. What a wonderful Christmas gift. I appreciate your time. And if anybody is obviously interested in pursuing further conversations around Manoj and the state of mind AI solutions, don't hesitate to reach out either to myself, Jeff Wellstead, or to Manoj Kumar. And we will make sure that we include our contact information and possibly some supportive documentation very shortly. But thank you very much for listening, and we appreciate your attention, and wishing you all a wonderful, happy holiday with your family and your friends, and a wonderful and incredible new year ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Wish you and your family very happy holidays, and thanks for having this uncut version of the dialogue to really get deeper into this particular topic. And since you touched upon onto state of mind AI, maybe the next conversation we can pick it up that how exactly generative AI could really transform or may really add a lot of value onto the employee experience side of the story. So looking forward to next conversation. But yeah, until then, enjoy your rest of the year and the vacation which is coming your way. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Manoj. We'll speak soon.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.